These cars bookend the hot hatch price range, so it may be unfair to compare them, but let's.
Maybe 103 brake horsepower doesn't sound like a lot, but it'll take you from 0 to 60 in 10.2, and you'll enjoy every second of it. That's fine out on the road, but here on the track, it's just about enough power to take you out of a slide, which she does with impunity. In terms of handling, the Fiesta is really quite composed for a car of its weight and power. There's plenty of poke in this Fiesta, but out here on the track, I'm afraid it really does show its failings. The handling is good, but not sufficiently good. The power is good, and I feel the brakes are fading a little bit too quickly for my liking.
So that's the pace car off the track. Now for the real thing.
When it comes to on-track performance, there is just no comparison between this and the Fiesta. There's so much more going for this car in terms of the way it drives and the way you can throw it around, slide it, and the speed at which it travels. It's got these big, powerful brakes that'll pull the car back from 100 miles an hour down to 0 in under 4 seconds. That's phenomenal braking power. The Renault Sport Clio 172, like a true hot hatch, has a brutish kind of sex appeal, a powerful, muscular stance, but without the sharp edges. Gutsy but smooth and well-behaved, and warm and generous on the inside. You might say all the best qualities. It'll set you back over £20,000, and for that you do get a proper pocket rocket. But I think the money could be much better spent. The Fiesta may not be a babe magnet unless they've got steel plates in their head, but at over £7,000 less, it's got enough poke to poke fun at this.
Nissan claim that their all-new Almera is their most European car to date, designed to achieve the highest European expectations and engineered almost entirely in Europe. It boasts a global platform which will differ only in cosmetics and is to be shared throughout Europe, Japan and the US. The hatchbacks, like this one, are to be built in England, whilst the 4 doors will still be built in Japan. Externally, their efforts would appear to have paid off if the car had been released 3 years ago.
Something old, something new, something borrowed, something blue.
What they refer to as its surf-tail roofline and overall streamlined bubble look has now been replaced with a far more boxy, robust appearance today. The overall performance of the chassis, both in terms of smooth ride quality and road adhesion during cornering, is nothing short of superb. Nissan claim to have increased body stiffness by 30% on the last Almera. Its 1.5-litre engine develops a fairly respectable 90 brake horsepower. However, this is a feat which is achieved in other marques in the same class from a more frugal 1.4-litre. 0 to 62 in 13.8 seconds, average. The Almera seems more at ease in achieving good acceleration at cruising speeds rather than from stationary. But it's not really the engine that's at fault here, but more specifically the gear ratios. Firstly, there's too much travel in the gear shift, and secondly, it doesn't really seem to find itself until it hits about 4,000 to 5,000 revs. Maybe they've decided to steal a leaf from the book of Honda Civic, but if that's the case, they've lost the plot. Good acceleration has got to be achieved in the lower rev band as well. I would have been a bit more forgiving of its sheep-like appearance had performance offered just a little more punch from a pound.
Put your hands in the air. Simple silence. Shake them all up.
This car looks tiny from the outside, but looks can be deceptive.
Simple silence. And you will never.
Internally, the Almera offers plenty of head, shoulder and legroom, although I do feel kind of hampered by this unusually large steering wheel. I mean, look at it, it's huge. True, the average European is of a bigger build than the average Asian, but this is ridiculous. The dash is very easy on the eye and generous with the facts without all the fuss. Spec is certainly up there with the best of them. Oodles of storage space with cubby holes aplenty. Anti-hijacking central locking, remote radio controls here on your steering wheel, and integrated radio, although no CD player is standard. Electric windows up front, dual airbags up front, and 3 crossover belts in the rear. I'm finding the brakes just a little bit on the sharp side. ABS, as in most cars in this class, is disappointingly an optional extra. It'll be interesting to see who's going to bite the bullet and throw it in future model launches. The Almera will set you back in the region of 14 grand, depending on whether you go for the 3, 4 or 5-door versions. And in fairness, it is among the cheapest of the mainstream competition, Focus, Astra, Corolla, while still offering a very substantial spec as standard. But if I had that kind of money to spend, another few hundred wouldn't break the bank. It's up against the toughest of competition in the most fiercely competitive market segment of them all. If the Almera is to make any headway here, it's uphill all the way. Overall, the Almera is a good, sturdy, reliable car with peace of mind in its 3-year warranty. It'll get you from A to B. It just won't get you there with panache, pizzazz, or a racing pulse. In a word, average. It just doesn't stand out from the rest. Looks like they've a thing or two yet to learn about us Europeans.
In this very seat sat a man that shaped modern Ireland, a man that was referred to up and down the country affectionately as Dev, and he's also the guy that my mother and father named me after. I'm sitting in IRL1, the Irish state car that was used by Eamon de Valera on English trips in the late 50s and early 60s. Unlike the limousines of today that carry politicians around, this one does not have bulletproof doors. It does not have a GPS satellite navigation system. It does not have reinflating tires. It doesn't even have electric windows. In fact, apart from a very cleverly disguised fuel filler cap and the places to put flags on the front of it, it's not very statesmanlike at all. In 1971, the Chevy Biscayne retired from active duty. Cushy civil service pension for this car. No, it was laid up in a barn only to be rescued, and it is now in the care of a dedicated enthusiast. It certainly does have class, and lots of it. It's got a coolness that modern cars today could only dream of. Even driving down the road, it exudes. No, it commands attention. But enough of this statesman lark driving in the back seat. I want to drive in the front seat. Kevin, you wouldn't just pull in here and give us a spin in the front, would you? Thanks. Can't wait. Big American Chevy. This big old American Chevy is quite unusual in that it's a right-hand drive. But back in the 60s, all the Irish state cars were right-hand drives. For such a huge car, it's got a very small engine. It's just a straight 6, 3.8 litre machine. When you consider it weighs in at just under 2.2 tons, it's not a whole pile of muscle for such a big car. The interior is straight out of the 50s. Well, obviously. Look at this, a Bakelite steering wheel, chrome knobs. It just oozes sex appeal, if you like that kind of thing. Riding around in my automobile.
My baby beside me at the wheel. I stole a kiss at the turn of a mile. My curiosity running wild. Cruising and playing the radio. With no particular place to go.
Do I like this car? Well, apart from the fact that it floats around corners like a boat, and it's like driving a ladder with wheels at each end, it's quite nice. But it's big, it's chunky, and it's got American everything. It may belong to the 50s rockabilly era. It may be outdated. It may be technologically antiquated. But it's still one of the most gorgeous cars I've ever seen. Now, if you're lucky enough to find a 1958 Chevy Biscayne, it'll cost you about £6,000. But this one, complete with its IRL #1 plate and the fact that it's steeped in Irish history, is absolutely priceless. Hey, I'm a happy guy. I got my soda, got my 58 Chevy parked outside, and got all my favourite tunes in the jukebox.
So, cars are your passion. You buy all the car magazines. You watch all the television programs. You soak up every bit of knowledge you can about cars. Well, if you fancy working in the car industry, I've got news for you. The car industry could be looking for you.
We've actually put together a training and careers initiative for the industry. We call it CAR, Careers and Recruitment for the Motor Industry. I think the biggest issue facing us is to ensure that we continue to attract and hold on to the very best people in our industry.
The big demand in the trade right now is for technicians, or what used to be called mechanics. This is down to two things: the failure of the Irish motor trade to take on apprentices during the recessionary years of the late 80s and early 90s, and the arrival of the high-tech companies, because they've been hoovering up all of the technicians. That means there's a huge shortage of mechanics out there. And that's why it can take weeks or even months to get your car booked in for a service these days. Now, missus.
We are starved of apprentices. We cannot get them. The industry didn't invest in apprenticeships, but they couldn't afford to. And now we have a major problem. We don't train mechanics anymore, we train technicians. There's no longer the man with the fag and the oily overalls.
Things are so bad that Motor Distributors, the company which handles Volkswagen and Audi in Ireland, has actually produced a recruitment video to try and attract young talent.
People need cars, and cars need people like you. And you can develop your skills in electronics, computerization, and the latest digital technology.
We want to attract the best people, so we have targeted 16 to 18-year-olds, and we want to take in new people into the industry. We believe that we're fishing from an ever smaller pool. We have gone out to try to find people of the highest possible calibre.
Apprentices take time. They take time to train. They're not productive in their first year or two. We try and nurture them along. When you interview people, they are not as enthusiastic as they are for other industries.
We actually provide a very wide range of training courses, individual short courses to bring people up to standards in specific areas, but also longer courses for qualification. We're involved in apprenticeship training with FOSS, and into the future we see ourselves developing very professional qualifications for every level in our industry. And it's very much a high-tech industry now. The technical jobs are very much computer-based, workshops very clean, very high-tech.
Well, that all sounds rosy, but what's it really like on the ground, at the coalface, among the grassroots, under the cars?
Nobody wants to work with their hands, because who wants to have dirty fingernails 5 days a week? It's not a pleasant job at the best of times. You are in a dirty environment.
You always still stays in your hands now, in your nails, in your hair. Well, money's not great starting off, but as you go on, the money will get better. Like, that's why most people won't do an apprenticeship. The apprenticeship takes 4 years to do. When you finish your apprenticeship and continue it on, by doing your city and guilds, like, that's what I'm going to do. Probably start up my own business.
We are competing with all the multinationals in Ireland the same as everybody else, and we are doing our best to recruit and to retain the people that we have. It's not an easy task.
At the moment, the sky is the limit for the technician. If you've got a very highly skilled one, you can command £10 an hour, but it's still not as strong or as high as the IT industry.
Every part of the industry has lost people to other sectors, but that trend may now be over.
We're finding that people who may have trained and qualified in the industry many years ago are now identifying that we actually provide far better opportunities than many of the high-tech companies that moved into Ireland, say 10 years ago or whatever. And we're finding that they are coming back. And I think the change on the shop floor in our industry has been fairly dramatic.
With 50,000 people working in the industry, there is a huge range of jobs. Sales is an area with high earning potential.
I got into the business 5.5 years ago. I just left school, I was doing my leaving cert, and then after getting a job, I really haven't looked back. Last year, I sold 640 cars. The earning potential in this job is very good. It is basically down to the amount of time, effort and dedication that you want to put into it. The rewards are there.
If you look at the growth in business in our industry over the last 4 or 5 years, I don't think any other business will have multiplied by 400 or 500%. And all of the jobs created in that period are local in every town and village and city in Ireland. They are good professional jobs. We've actually identified that what we haven't done in the industry to help people is to put one single shop window for the industry. And we have now established that. And as I said, we call it CAR, Careers in the Motor Industry. The address is 5 Upper Pembroke Street, Dublin 2, which is the Society's address. And the website, www.simi.ie, will get you to all the information you require on careers in the motor industry.
There are job opportunities in all areas of the motor industry, some more attractive than others. But there's still a big gulf between spending your days in a suit in a sparkling showroom and clambering around in a cold service bay. But things are changing. And I reckon now's a pretty good time to be joining the motor trade. Actually, all you really need to be able to do is to go like this. Ooh, it's going to be a big job.
Think Nissan, you think Micras and Primeras, you think conservative, staid, functional. But not one of these words could be used to describe the Nissan Skyline GT-R. Giant Slayer, Godzilla, and best all-round supercar in the world would be more appropriate.
The GT-Rs were developed on the track in Japan to be a race-bred road car. The R32 GT-R had a 100% race victory record, while with the R33, Nissan could genuinely lay claim to having built one of the most exciting and advanced production cars of all time.
So where do you go from there? You build a better one, of course. The R34 Skyline GT-R is described as the super evolution of its predecessor.
Improving on something that's already so acclaimed is a tough job, and Nissan don't fall into the trap of changing something just to make it new. The aerodynamics have received a lot of attention. There's a new rear wing with a variable adjustment of 10 to 30 degrees, while under the car there are new front and rear diffusers which smooth out the airflow and actually create downforce, so it's got even better grip. Forget seat heaters and satellite navigation, this has got telemetry. It's a real race car toy and it's no trip computer. It calls up engine information and it's even got a G-meter and a lap timer. If you do have your heart set on a Skyline though, you are better to get it from the UK because you get this leather interior as standard. The speedo is already converted to miles per hour, but most importantly, you get the European chip. In Japan, a gentleman's agreement prevents road cars from exceeding 112 miles an hour or 300 brake, while the European chip gives the Skyline 340 brake and a top speed of 155 miles an hour from this 2.6 six-cylinder twin-turbo engine. And remember, that's restricted. A few tweaks see 700 brake from this engine and an unofficial 0 to 60 time of 3.2 seconds. You will, of course, kiss goodbye to your Nissan warranty, but if you're driving a Skyline, you're not exactly capable of rational thought.
This car was developed on the track to perform on the track.
Keep rolling, 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 rolling. Keep rolling, 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 rolling. Keep rolling, 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 rolling. Keep rolling, 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 rolling.
The Atessa ETS Pro is a Nissan four-wheel drive system. Under normal conditions, the Skyline is a rear-wheel drive. As soon as it detects a break in traction, it can transfer up to 50% drive to the front wheels in 1/100 of a second. It's all about getting the power down, not cutting it out. But the best bit is the super high-cast system. I love this. When you turn the front wheels into a corner, the rear wheels steer in the opposite direction. It allows the Skyline to corner like it's the bullet train. Okay, now we're in fifth, actually cornering on a damp track at 120 miles an hour. It's not slipping, it's not sliding. On the straight, 5th gear. Just coming up, 140. Harden the brakes. Down into 4th gear. Turning to the banking. We're pulling 1G through this at 90 miles an hour. No loss of traction, no slipping, and that's a lap. The R34 is mind-blowing, but with its track-developed precision performance, it does tread a fine, fine line. At some point, race car becomes impossible as a road car, tramlining on suspension that's too stiff, insurance that's off the scale, and MPG that's listed as NA. Take that to Ireland with our roads, our taxes, plus the conversion to sterling, and I'm afraid we're stuck thinking Nissan, thinking Micra, thinking conservative.
Comedy galore coming up next with the gang from Bull Island.
On
Do
the
stay
next
with us.
drive, the Alfa Romeo Spider, a stone classic.